Okay, so let's discuss the nature of research class. When you say research, this comes from the word searcher, a French word searcher, which means to search or to seek. That's what we are doing if you are going to do a research. Now, we are going to search for a problem and to seek solution for this problem. So when you say research, this one is systematic, at the same time scientific, empirical, formal, and critical investigation of a certain problem that is most likely related to us, okay? Related to our course or related to our activities in our day-to-day lives. So these are actually the characteristics of research. Let's discuss them one by one. When you say systematic, in research class, we follow a series of series of stages. And that stages class starts with the identification of a problem. So I guess I have presented this last time sa inyo. Now we are now on the stage of selecting your problem. That is why you are doing your concept paper. And then after that, we are going to formulate a research title. So actually, in the concept paper, it is not a problem if your title is not yet final, no? Kasi the most important thing is mag-research problem muna tayo, and then after that, we can always revise your title before really moving into the next phases, okay? So again, that's the start, the identification of a problem. Before class, you can move on to other stages and until makomplete nyo yung paper ninyo. And then this is also scientific. Therefore, we are basing everything upon the principles and methods of science. Okay, so everything should be anchored to scientific principles and methods, especially for experimental research. We don't really make our own procedure, but we are going to use procedures that are already accepted in the scientific community, and at the same time, ginagamit na talaga, okay, napatunayan na there are evidences for these protocols or procedures. And then also, research are empirical. So when you say empirical, this is really based on our own experience, okay? Now, if your study is experimental, it means that you are really the one who will make the experiment, who will conduct the experiment, and ikaw mismo yung makaka-observe ng result. Okay, that's empirical. And then, the research class is also formal. Therefore, nasabi ko sa inyo last time, we follow class a certain format for research. I'll be giving you the institutional format, and at the same time, I'll be teaching you the APA format kasi yan yung fina-follow talaga natin sa institution. And lastly, we have here critical. So when you say critical, research class actually involves careful investigation or analysis of something, or we do precise judgments or evaluations ng mga problem na we are studying, we are looking into. Okay? So ito yung mga characteristics ng research. So ang tanong ko sa inyo ngayon, is research beneficial? Why are we doing this? Sige daw. Kasi tubagon ko ninyo ma'am para makapasa mi and makamove on mi sa among pagka medtech student. Hindi mo maka internship if dili ninyo ni siya mapasa. So why are we doing this? Is research beneficial? Yes, that is correct. To help the community. So most of the time, we are looking into problems that are existing in the community, in our society, and we are trying to look for solutions. We are trying to address them. So that is the research is really beneficial. A lot of things in our surroundings are actually product of research. We have electric current because somebody conducted research about that. Okay? Yes, to discover a lot of things. A lot of discoveries, our drugs, are product of research. Products of research yan sila lahat. Yung mga alam nyo ngayon sa medtech are all products of research. So definitely, research is beneficial. Okay, now we have kinds of research. We only have three here: basic, applied, and empirical. Let us try to differentiate these kinds. Okay, so let's start with basic researches. When you say basic researches, we are doing this just to satisfy our curiosity or to understand human behavior. Okay, so why are they doing this? Let's try to find out the reason behind that. That's basic research only. So again, we are doing basic research because we just want answers to our questions involving, example, human behavior. Okay? And then what are the examples? If we are doing basic researches, we have the following examples: understanding what motivates people to work hard for their jobs. Okay, example, kung meron sa inyong gumawa ng concept paper about job satisfaction of medtech working in hospitals here in General Santos City, that is a basic research. We just want to answer our question whether they are satisfied or not with their works, including their salaries, of course, and the work that they are doing. Okay, and what motivates them to work hard for their job. Then we also have here example, relationship between emotional quotient and leadership skills. Though we don't really do this for medtech research, no, because this is not somewhat related to your field, but this is an example of a basic research. We want to answer if there is a relationship. We want to know if there is a relationship between the emotional quotient of a person to his or her leadership skill. And lastly, we have influence of stress levels and how often students engage in academic cheating. Okay? Sige. This one is also to satisfy our curiosity if there is a effect, kung mataas ba yung stress level ng isang estudyante sa kanyang pag-aaral, mataas din ba yung tendency niyang mag-commit into cheating. Okay, so these are all basic research. We are trying to understand principles behind human actions or behind human behavior. But if you opt to do an applied research, this is really into solving a particular problem. Okay? Kasi doon sa basic research, hindi naman siya magsosolve ng problem. You just want to understand a certain problem. Ito, talagang isosolve natin siya. Okay? So example, determining the cause of low morale in given department or organization, or studies about prevention of bullying, or even studies na yung sa cheating kasi kanina, stress levels and academic cheating, we are not really solving that cheating na problem. Or we just want to know if may influence ba yung academic stress. Dito, if you want to address these cheating issues in the school, then that will fall under applied researches. Okay? Again, itong applied research para mag-solve ng certain problem. And thirdly, we have the last kind of research, the empirical research. Ito yung ang data na makukuha are products of actual experimentation or actual observation. So dito magfo-fall yung mga experimental research natin, wherein the researcher is really the one who will conduct the experiment. Siya mismo yung mag-o-observe. Okay, so the data are derived directly from the actual observation or experimentation, and we are dealing with population samples here. So this is not limited to experimental research only, but we can also do descriptive research here as long as the data is directly from a certain population and the researcher will be the one to observe and collect this data. Okay? And dito magfo-fall yung may mga hypothesis testing. Okay? So these are the three kinds of research. Do you have questions or clarifications? Wala so far. Okay. So just let me know if you have questions. You can send it sa chat box if you are unable to turn on your microphone. Now, let's move on. Iba yung iba yung kinds of research, iba din yung classification of research But most of the time we use these classifications, quali and quanti. Okay? Ito yung pwede yung pagpilian as you are doing your concept paper. You may opt to make a qualitative research or a quantitative one. But let's start with the qualitative research. When you say qualitative research, I guess I have informed you about this last meeting that when you say quali, we don't have numerical data. Okay? Qualitative research don't have numerical data. Okay, it's okay. Kung hindi makapag-turn on. Therefore, we are dealing here with data that cannot be quantified. Like, for example, we have the experiences. Our experience as a student cannot be quantified. We cannot give numbers to it. Wait lang, kay Lumban. Yan. And beliefs also of a person cannot be quantified. Meanings of something, attributes, and symbols. Those are examples of things that we cannot quantify. Therefore, if your study is about these things, then that will fall sa qualitative research. Okay? So our aim here is to gather understanding of human behavior and the reasons why they act like that. Okay, that's qualitative research. So what are the advantages of doing this classification of research? We can study more complex aspects of a person's experience. Remember, we cannot quantify experience. Therefore, we cannot really make a questionnaire and use a Likert scale, for example, yung kagaya ng mga pinapasagot sa inyo na questionnaire na may pagpipilian na 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like always. Merong verbal interpretation yung mga numbers na yon. For experience, we cannot give numbers to that and we cannot generalize kasi the experience of one may not be true to another person. So we can really dig deeper to his or her own experience when we do qualitative research. And fewer restriction or assumptions are placed on the data to be collected. Kasi we take their words as it is. Okay, kung ano yung sinabi ng in-interview mo, ayun talaga yung experience niya. Not everything can be quantified or quantified easily, and individuals can be studied in more depth. So nasabi ko na yan kanina. And this is good for exploratory research and at the same time hypothesis generation. So if we have a certain topic and we don't really have a lot of references, walang mga background na mga ideas coming from other authors, we don't really know the current setting of a certain phenomenon, then it is actually good to do qualitative research. We will explore what is really happening there. Hindi tayo makakagawa kasi ng example, questionnaire or instrument if we don't have a background over a certain thing. So we can again do a qualitative research for that. And the participants are able to provide data in their own words and in their own way. Since we are doing interview most likely for qualitative research, pwedeng sumagot yung participants sa way na gusto nila. They can use their own language and they are not restricted. So they can answer your questions kung ano yung gusto nilang isabi. Hindi kagaya ng using a questionnaire wherein the researcher will provide the answers and they will just choose. Okay? So how about the disadvantages of doing a qualitative research? Number one is really we cannot really determine whether their answers are truthful or not, meaning we cannot validate and we cannot we are not sure with the reliability of the answers of our participants. Kasi when we conduct interview, again, we take their words as it is. And we do not judge them if they are like lying or not. So that's the difficult thing about doing a qualitative research. And there is more subjectivity in analyzing the data. So just like with the other type or classification of research, though we are just conducting interview, we have linguistic data, but we will still analyze their words. Therefore, hindi siya masyadong objective na yung pag-analyze natin. We have a tendency to be subjective in analyzing their words. And take note, we have here the data overload. Since we are asking them open-ended questions, they are free to answer what they want to answer, what they want to say. Therefore, there will be times na magde-data overload tayo. Marami masyado silang sinabi sa isang question pa lang. And this is also time-consuming. Okay? So last time, yung pinakahuling natapos sa kanilang study are actually the qualitative researches. Kasi interview takes time, at the same time, the analysis, itong analysis talaga, the transcription and the analysis of qualitative research takes a lot of time to be done. Okay? Questions about qualitative research before we move on to quantitative research? Yes. Lindy, are you raising your hand?
Opo, ma'am. Di ba po sa qualitative research po, may gumagamit po ng mga questionnaire. Yung sa questionnaire po ba, pwede po ba kami gumawa ng sarili naming questionnaire o mag-adapt po talaga from a previous conducted research po na related din po sa study?
Okay. For qualitative research, most of the time, we don't call that questionnaire. We call that interview guide. So you are going to make your own interview guide depending on your topic. Okay? So ang ginagawa lang is nagpapa-validate lang tayo sa experts kung tama ba yung mga questions na i-include nyo doon sa interview guide ninyo. So especially for phenomenological studies, we don't really use questionnaires. Instead, interview guide yung ginagawa natin kasi magkakandak talaga tayo ng interview. Mahirap mag-qualitative research na questionnaire lang na ipapasagot lang natin sila sa papel with our questions, no, kasi very limited yung makukuha natin na data. Magiging very structured siya, and hindi natin totally ma-explore, for example, yung experience nila. Okay? So again, you will be doing your own interview guide and will have it validated by experts in the field. That's what we are going to do. Okay?
At po, ma'am.
Kunwari
po, ganon, maggawa po kami ng questionnaire, tapos ipa-validate po siya. May fee po ba yan para sa expert na mag-validate?
Meron yan siyang fee for the experts. Our minimum requirement for the one na mag-validate ng ating questionnaire, our interview guide, are those na merong master's degree. Okay, so hanap tayo ng persons with master's degree sa specific field na yan. And most of the time, maniningil talaga sila. Pero kamo na magsabot kung pila. Wala siya talagang taripa na ayan talaga yung binabayad natin for the evaluator. Wala siyang ganon. So you ask, if you approach someone na magpapavalidate kayo, kasali sa itatanong ninyo kung magkano yung sinisingil nila. Baka kasi hindi nyo kayanin yung sinisingil nila. So hanap na lang tayo ng ibang evaluator na kaya natin. Okay? So yun yung gagawin natin na last time, merong mga nagpapavalidate sa mga teachers dito sa school. If I'm not mistaken, 300 yun yung binayad nila sa each na validator. So siguro ganun pa rin naman. Hindi naman siguro drastic yung pagbabago sa fee ng evaluator ng validator. So mga ganun pa rin, mga 300. So, ang minimum na number of na validator is 3. So, mo na inyong gastuhan. So, balik kung tag 300 lang yun siya, marag 900 na to. Tanan, kasi tatlo. Okay, now let's talk about quantitative research. So, for quantitative research, we are going to have numerical data here. Okay, so meron tayong numbers na data and we're going to analyze this number. Syempre, we are going to use statistical tools. Okay? Mga statistical testings. We're going to employ mathematical models here. We're going to test hypotheses and we're going to analyze the data using statistics. So what are the advantages of doing quantitative research? This allows us to measure and analyze our data. If we cannot measure experience, then there are a lot of things that we can measure and we can have numbers at the end. But we will always have to analyze these numbers in order for us to draw a conclusion over our topic. And this will be more objective when it comes to the findings. Kasi when you are going to use statistics, we have like series of rules or guidelines to follow for us to make a correct interpretation. Unlike for the qualitative research na we are just going to read the transcript of the interview and give meanings based on how we perceive their answers. So depende kasi yon sa nagbasa kung gaano niya naintindihan, yung sagot ng in-interview for qualitative research. So most likely subjective yun. Ito, most likely objective tayo kasi nga gumagamit tayo ng statistical testings for analysis. Okay, so quantitative research can be used to test hypotheses sa ating mga experiments. And by the end of our research, we can either accept or reject this hypothesis. When you say hypothesis, that's an educated guess. Okay, so like if we have problem and we are proposing a solution for that certain problem, then we are going to test or to check whether our proposal na solution is correct or not. Okay, so by the end of the study, we can either accept or reject this educated guess or proposal. What's the disadvantage or the disadvantages of doing a quantitative research? Most of the time, we don't study things in their natural setting, especially for experimental research. So example, drug discovery, like you want to test a certain plant sa kanyang antibacterial activity. We are not going to test that in its natural setting. Instead, we are going to test it in vitro. So we are going to culture that certain bacteria and test for zone of inhibition. So again, we are not studying here things in their natural setting. Okay, and a large sample of the population must be studied for more accurate results. Example, you are conducting a survey. We cannot conduct a survey for 5 people only. Our results cannot be reliable. So we are going to have more people to be involved in our research so that we can assure na our results are accurate and at the same time precise. Okay, so kung nag-survey kayo, walang 5 tao lang ha. Most likely marami talaga yan. Nagko-compute tayo by the way ng sample size. So I will be teaching you that also, how to compute for the sample size. Now, let's have types of research. Madami, no? May kinds of research, may classification of research, and then meron pa talagang types of research. Marami masyado ito. For the types of research class, ito sila. Even correlational can be under the, i-type ko na nga lang kasi nahirapan ako, wala pala ako. This will be under quantitative. Quantitative research kasi we have class numerical data for these types of research. However, itong dalawa sa baba, under ito sa qualitative. Sige. So let's check. I believe some of you has already started with their concept paper, and let's check kung saan magfo-fall yung mga naisip nyo dyan na research. Okay? Sige, let's start with the descriptive research. When you say descriptive research, from the name itself, descriptive, we just want to describe something. We can describe a certain phenomenon or an issue. We can describe the characteristics of our population. We can describe the characteristic of a certain group of people. Yun yung gagawin natin for the descriptive study. Okay? Now, since this is quantitative research, we have numerical data for this. We are dealing with something that can be counted. Okay? Yun yung sa descriptive na research. Now, what's the example of a descriptive research? Finding the most frequent disease that affects the children of a town. Last meeting, I presented to you samples of studies that were already conducted by the previous batches of medtech students, and meron doong studies like identification of like the prevalence of helminthiasis in a certain barangay. That is actually a descriptive research class kasi we are describing that this certain group of people have this kind of helminthiasis, okay, this kind of disease, okay? Yung mga knowledge, attitude, and practices na mga studies are also descriptive studies, okay? Descriptive studies pa rin yun sila. We want to know kung by the end of our study, we can describe whether they have high level of knowledge or low level of knowledge sa certain na topic. Example, dengue. Kung tumataas, hindi ako sure, pero kung tumataas yung dengue cases natin ngayon, example sa Gensan, then we can ask the residents of General Santos City about their knowledge sa dengue. So at the end of our research, we can conclude whether they have high level or low level of knowledge. Descriptive study yun. Even attitude and practices. Yung practices nila, descriptive pa rin yun class, but under ito sa quantitative research, meaning we have numerical values after the data gathering. We can make questionnaires class, yung mga naka-Likert scale na questionnaire ng 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pipili na lang sila. Numerical data yon, and descriptive pa rin siya kasi again, we can describe the characteristic of our chosen respondents. Okay? What are the advantages of doing a descriptive study? So the people studied are unaware, so they act naturally or as they usually do in everyday situation. If this is an observational study, we'll just observe them, how they act, how they do things in reality, and we can observe them in their natural setting. If we're going to use a questionnaire, then pwede pa rin yun siya. Actual pa rin nila. Like sa knowledge nila, makikita pa rin natin doon. Actual knowledge nila over a topic. And then this is less expensive kasi all you need here is your questionnaire. Okay? Dito, sa case na ito, yung tanong ni Lindy kanina, we're going to use a questionnaire for the survey here sa quantitative research. You have the option whether to make your own questionnaire or to adapt a questionnaire. Okay? So you have class, you can look for studies related to your study, and if they have a specific questionnaire, we can always adapt that as long as we ask permission from them if we are going to use their questionnaire. Or we can adapt. Iba kasi yung adapt with an A or an O. If you say adapt na ADOPT, O yun siya, it means you are copying everything and you are using all things na nasa questionnaire nila, gagamitin natin doon sa study mo din. But if you're going to adapt with an A, ADAPT, it means we will still use their questionnaire, ask permission from them, but we can revise parts of these questionnaires. Example, they have questions that are not really suitable for your study, then we can omit that. Or we can revise the question. That's adapting a questionnaire. And that is permissible for a quantitative descriptive study. Okay? So less expensive siya. Walang masyadong gagamitan na chemicals. Okay? And as it is used to describe and not to make any conclusions, it is to start the research with it. Meaning, from the start pa lang, our things na gagawin is to really describe lang, pirmi lang ta maghatag og description of the topic, and at the end of the study, description of the result. Okay? Now, how about the disadvantages? This requires more skills. Number one, you're going to make your own questionnaire. For example, wala ka talagang makitang pwedeng i-adapt na questionnaire. So this requires a skill para makagawa ka ng questionnaire mo. And does not identify the cause behind a phenomenon. So in the case of, for example, knowledge about dengue, we are not actually looking into the cause, why they have low knowledge or high knowledge. We just want to describe whether they have high or low knowledge about dengue. That's an example. And response rate is low. This is always the problem of students conducting research using a questionnaire or yung survey na research. Kasi we cannot, hindi natin mapilit itong mga respondents na ito na sumagot sa questionnaire natin. So nagkakaproblema sila with the response. Merong magta-thumbs up but will not really answer the questionnaire. Merong mangsisin lang sa inyo. Meron talagang mag-refuse automatically. So our problem is the response rate. So it will take time also kasi we need to gather a lot of respondents, right? So, mag-start kayo ng maaga para makakollect din kayo ng maaga. Kasi meron talagang magre-refuse to answer your study, your questionnaire. And results can change over the period of time. So, example, may study na dati about knowledge of residents of Jensen about dengue. But kung dati pa yun, it might be true now. So maybe naging educated na yung mga residents sa Jensen. So baka hindi na example low level yung kanilang knowledge sa isang thing or sa isang topic. So yung results ng ating descriptive studies can change, can always change. So you may repeat your study again and see if parehas lang ba yung description nila or hindi. Okay? Do you have questions about descriptive na study? Wala. Sige, we have experimental research. From the name itself, we will really do experiment here. And we are going to predict and control certain phenomenon while experimenting. And sa experimental research, we will really establish cause and effect relationship. Talagang pag-aaralan natin ang cause ng isang phenomenon or ang isang issue. Kasi sa descriptive, hindi natin yon pinag-aaralan. Dito, we are really establishing cause and effect relationship. Example, plant material. We will really do an experiment whether this certain plant material can increase or decrease the blood sugar level or the lipids of our patient, ganon. So, cause and effect relationship. What are the disadvantages of doing an experimental research? We have here artificiality, especially sa mga laboratory animals natin. Artificial lang muna kasi we cannot give our plant extracts directly to human subject. That will be unethical. So, may artificiality tayo sa ginagawa natin na experiment. At the same time, feasibility. So, kaya kanina sabi ko, you have to look at your procedures if that is feasible or not. Kasi, if the procedure is very sophisticated, we don't have the equipment here sa school, then you cannot finish your study. And unethical. Sabi ko kanina, unethical siya. Even though we don't really give our substances directly to human subjects, but remember, animals do have rights also. So we have to consider ethical principles or considerations also for them. Okay? So the simplest experimental designs class have at least two variables, the independent and the dependent variables. I think I mentioned this last time. When you say independent variables, these are the predictor variables. Nagpe-predict ng outcome. So definitely the dependent variable is the outcome. And we have at least two groups of participants. We have the control group and at the same time, the experimental group. So for example, meron tayong nagkakandak tayo ng experiment about blood glucose level. Meron tayong isang grupo of animals na bibigyan natin ng plant material natin. That's the experimental group. Meron din tayong control. So the control can be positive or negative, meaning yung positive control, we will give our animals yung positive na agent, meaning na siya, established na siya sa market na talagang nagpapababa ng sugar. Example, metformin, that's a positive result. Positive kasi, positive control, kasi na siya, positive tayo na when we are going to give this to our animals, this will really cause decrease in the blood sugar level. Yan. Pwede din negative na example, tubig lang yung ibibigay natin. So we will not really expect a reduction sa blood sugar level. Okay, so meron tayong variables and groups for our experimental research. Okay, so kung magkakanta kayo ng study about an alternative stain, you have your groups there, the experimental group that will be your own stain. If it is coming from a plant, then that's the experimental group. And then you will compare it to the control group, yung stain talaga na existing ngayon na ginagamit nyo in the laboratory. Okay? Next, we have the correlational research. From the word itself, correlational, what we are looking here is the relationship. Okay? Iba yung relationship na cause and effect relationship, ha. Ito relationship lang talaga. We will not determine cause and effect. Okay? Pero pwede din itong experimental, pwede din survey. So, anong example ng correlational research? Yung example kanina na yung stress level and engagement to cheating. Yun yung example ng correlational research. Kukunin natin ang relationship ng stress, level of stress, doon sa pag-engage nila sa cheating. Meaning kung tataas ba yung stress level nila, tataas din ba yung pag-engage nila sa cheating. That's looking into the relationship. So that will fall under correlational research. Actually, correlational research is still under the descriptive na study. Okay? So what are the advantages of doing a correlational study? You can collect much information from many subjects at one time. Okay, if you are going to conduct a survey, you can collect a lot of information. Like you can collect their stress levels, and then you can also collect data regarding their engagement to cheating. Okay, You can study a wide range of variables and their relationship. Okay? And these variables are most of the time not easily produced in the laboratory. Okay? That's a correlational study. But the disadvantage if you're going to conduct a correlational research is this does not indicate causation, meaning we are not looking into the cause why these things happen. You just want to know if there is a relationship between this variable to this another variable. Okay? And then you can also do ethnographic research wherein you are going to look into a certain group of people and study their customs and traditions, their cultural behavior. Okay, pero sa ethnographic research, this is qualitative, meaning we don't have numbers na data here. We can just go into the community, observe what they are doing in their day-to-day lives as their traditions and customs, or you can interview them. Okay? And write in your paper what you have observed while living in the community or what you have gotten from the interview. Susulat mo yan doon sa iyong papel. Ethnographic, pag-culture ang pinag-uusapan natin. And lastly, phenomenological research. Ito yung pinakamaraming qualitative research sa school natin. When you say phenomenological research, kadugtong nito ang word na experience. If you want to explore the experiences of your participants regarding a phenomenon or a situation, that is phenomenological research. Okay, so most of the time these studies have titles starting with lived experiences. Example, lived experiences of medical technology students during the pandemic. Okay? Studying during the pandemic. Experience nila yon. We cannot really generate, we cannot quantify their experience and we cannot generalize it kasi your experience may not be true to other students. So this is again another type of qualitative research. Words lang lahat. Kung ano yung sinabi ng participants mo, yun din ang isusulat mo. Okay? And then research techniques. These are the techniques that we use when we want to gather data. You can do interviews. Ang interviews, pwede natin itong gamitin if we want to do a qualitative research. Okay? Qualitative. Mag-interview tayo. So, syempre, during the interview, we don't have numbers there. Qualitative research yan siya. For survey, most likely this is quanti. For focus group discussion, yung interview kasi isa-isa yon. You interview one person, after finishing interviewing this person, you may interview another person again. Itong focus group discussion, this is still quali, meaning you're still doing an interview but it's by group, meaning sabay-sabay mo silang i-interview. If you have 8 participants, isahin mo silang interview, focus group, para kayong nagdi-discuss in a group. The desk research, ito yung ginagawa ninyo ngayon since you are doing, example, introduction of the concept paper, you are looking into the background, that is desk research. Sa inyong mga laptop with your gadgets. Observation, pwedeng during the experiment, you may observe the results of the experiment, or for ethnographic research wherein you will really live with the people in the community and observe their customs and traditions. And lastly, syempre, we have the experimentations for our experimental research wherein you will really do an actual experiment inside the laboratory. So these are the things that you may do for you to gather your data. Okay, so I think that's the end of my lesson this morning. Do you have questions? Hubo lang, no? Kasi I'm just, presenting to you the types of research pa lang. So that this may help you decide what are you going to write in your concept paper. Question, what do you want to do? A quali research or a quanti na research? Ano ba yung so far na ginawa ninyo dyan ngayon? Quanti, quali? Quanti? Quanti, okay. Quanti. So most of you will be doing quanti research. Last year, itong mga fourth year nyo ata, mga fourth year nyo, walang nag-quali sa kanila ni isa. Ay, meron pala. Merong isang quali pala. Yung sa grupo nila, yung grupo yun? Kay Miss Maliga ata. Hindi ko maalala yung study nila. Pero yun siya. Quali. Sila lang yung nag-iisang quali last time. Medyo mahirap kasi. Though madali lang naman mag-interview, pero mahirap na during sa pagsusulat. Kasi you have to transcribe the interview pa, meaning verbatim. Kung nag-ha sila, nag-o, and all the background noise, you have to write it in the transcript. And then after writing it in the transcript, you have to analyze their words. So medyo mahirap mag-analyze ng words kesa sa numbers class. Meaning, lalagyan mo kasi ng meaning yung mga words nila. Ikaw yung magbibigay ng meaning. So kaya sabi ko kanina, one disadvantage of doing a qualitative research is it has more subjectivity doon sa findings of the study. Kasi depende kung ano yung pagkaintindi mo sa sinabi nila, syempre yun yung pag-analyze mo sa sinabi nila. Unlike kung we have numbers and we are using statistics, i-follow lang natin yung rules ng statistics, then we can have a certain conclusion. Okay? So most of the researches that are done by medtech students are actually quantitative research. Either they do experiments in the laboratory or they conduct survey. Okay? Nagkakandak sila ng survey. Kagaya nung waste disposal last time, nagkandak lang sila ng survey about the knowledge, the attitude, and the practices of the community in waste disposal. PPE-related waste. Ayan. Pero may gusto din pala ng quali. It's okay. Kasi kailangan din naman natin yung qualitative study for us to understand human behavior. Okay? Bakit? Ito yung experiences nila. Tsagaan lang talaga. Makapal lang talaga ang paper ng quali class. Kasi marami syempre silang sagot. Unlike na maganda ka ng survey, limited yung questions mo sa survey and then i-summarize mo pa siya yung mga numbers doon. Itong sa quali kasi isulat mo lahat sa transcript. Okay? Anything else? Do you have concern?